Good morning. It is May 1st, and this is the Education and Culture Committee. We're having our fourth and final session on the operating budget and for MCPS, and we have a number of items to discuss to close out that we haven't touched yet, like technology modernization and a few other things, and then we will make a funding recommendation and talk through some of the scenarios that are in the packet and others that colleagues on the committee might want to talk about. So let's dig in. Mr. Prouty, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Thank you very much, Chair Jawando. So in your packet, you have information on pages 2 and 3 about the technology modernization project. There also is a brief presentation from CPS about that. And then following that, you have information on a number of CIP projects, facility planning, materials management, building relocation, and relocatable classrooms. And then finally, after that, we'll talk about a number of items that we haven't discussed yet that are relatively big ticket items on the board proposal. And then there's some options for you in terms of your funding request, or recommendation, I should say.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Ms. McGuire, are you kicking us off?
Certainly, I will. Just very briefly, thank you. And then I'll turn to my colleague to talk more about technology modernization. I do just want to start by saying, first of all, Dr. Taylor has a conflict today that he regrets very much that he can't be here, but again, a requirement with our state colleagues, and so he and I are in separate spaces today. Thank you for this opportunity. We'll answer questions. I would just say the first couple of items that you have here to discuss do reflect some reductions that the executive put forward in our current revenue projects in the CIP, and we'll talk through those, but those do have implications for these projects, and we just want to again acknowledge and be clear about that, understanding the fiscal limitations that the committee is dealing with. But we can talk more about the specifics on those as we go through.
Appreciate that.
All right. Good morning, council members of the Education and Culture Committee. My name is Kimberly Fields, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Technology Officer for MCPS for about a year now. I welcome the opportunity to speak to all of you this morning as it relates to the FY27 technology modernization, also known as TechMod. The TechMod budget this morning resides within, back a slide. Yeah, thank you. The TechMod budget this morning that resides in the Division of Technology Services. It creates a consistent and technology experience across classrooms, offices, and shared learning spaces, as well as a modernized security and network infrastructure, which strengthens the data protection, cybersecurity, and system reliability. And then also, based upon the OIG Chromebook audit, this has also allowed for a value add, I would say, in the optimization of critical asset inventory management processes, which we are targeting to drive measurable efficiencies and improve resource allocations across the district. Next slide, please. What is TechMod? The Technology Modernization TechMod project benefits students and staff district-wide by providing safe, creative, collaborative, and up-to-date technology. It focuses on providing support for engaging learning environments by refreshing devices, interactive panels, printer security, and network infrastructure. From the pictures, you can see a sample of the learning engagement with the students as our technology implementation specialists have collaborated with teachers to enhance lessons using technology for students to learn how to code, be creative, brainstorming ideas, encouraging critical thinking, and complex problem solving in an interactive project. The team has worked with students and teachers as it relates to robotics, engineering, bring students' stories to life, even additional using 3D printers and virtual reality platforms. Next slide, please. The TechMod assists students in being able to obtain internet access if access doesn't exist. Refreshing student and staff devices ensures technology can keep pace with the current curriculum, learning platforms, and accessibility tools. Modern tools allow teachers to personalize instructions and better meet diverse learning needs. And we also want to make sure we have consistent and reliable student and staff experiences across the classrooms. We do support the STEM school support approved and technology supplies that they may need. Technology being introduced or used in the district for students and staff, training may be necessary. Also, training can be included We do include our community and our parents. So, for example, we did host the Cybersecurity and Digital Finance webinar series collaborating with the University of Maryland, Capital One, and Fidelity Partnerships, or even the digital safety presentations for community schools. Even in addition, we do also help with the opening of schools, supporting parents in getting acclimated with different various forms of technology. We also make sure to updated technology helps safeguard our data, ensures compliance, and by replacing equipment reduces the breakdown, support issues, and instructional interruptions. Reliable networks reduce instructional downtime and support the digital learning, and of course our standard annual software renewals. Next slide, please. For FY26, $27.3 million was appropriated, with $11 million remaining unspent and will be used for FY27 TechMod to bridge the FY26 and FY27 budgets to meet existing commitments and maintain operational continuity. For FY27, the Board of Education requested $33.9 million, while County Executive recommended a reduced funding level to $16.9 million. In closing,
Go ahead.
Thank you for your time and continued support. The TechMod project is a strategic investment that keeps the district technology current, scalable, sustainable, maintainable, and supportable. It positions the district to adopt new instructional tools, assessments, and emerging technologies as they may evolve.
And I just wanted to add briefly onto that. As you can see in this slide, certainly the executive's recommendation is a significant reduction. And I do want to be clear that the $11 million unspent is not unspent because we didn't know what to do with it. It's a matter of timing, and that was money that was programmed and allocated for use at the end of the school year in the summer. So that's just a natural spending pattern. However, the good news about that is that at this point we can make some adjustments if needed to make that bridge, as we're saying, with a reduced funding level. That would be a one-time benefit. I want to be clear that this is not a new sustainable low. This is, again, a factor of our spending pattern and how we can adjust if necessary to address this in this particularly, challenging year. But it will have an impact on the level of refresh that we had anticipated to do with those funds.
So yeah, I appreciate that context, and let's just talk about it a little more. And I know we have Mr. Levchenko here too, whose numbers are, spinning in his head all night. So it's basically in the amended CIP you had about 28.5 every year, 11 million unspent. But you said that it is kind of programmed.
It is absolutely programmed.
Yeah, and could you talk about just give more context to what? What would that, if you had the same money, what would you be doing with that 11 million for the end of this school year here?
So primarily this would be our annual summer refresh of devices. So we're looking at, teacher laptops, student Chromebooks, technology products that need to be refreshed over the summer. Could be the smart boards, could be box lights. So it would be that normal summer refresh cycle. Again, we can make adjustments to that cycle, prioritize within that cycle, and bridge it
for 1 year.
And that is what we would need to do because, quite frankly, a $17 million recommendation in TechMod, there are standing commitments there and other things, licenses as well as payments that have to be made, so that in and of itself would not get us through the year. So we can do this to get through the year, but that is only a 1 year solution. And again, I do want to emphasize that it is programmed, but we can and will make adjustments if necessary.
And then going back up to 27 next year, while still below your request, would get you back, you'd be able to manage that, you think? Because the C's recommended, I think, has
If we go back up in
16,
28,
9,
yes.
and then you go up to 27
Yes.
next year.
And so certainly, part of our exercise, and I will just give some kudos to our Chief Technology Officer here, who has really dug into a lot of the underlying structures in the technology area that needed updating and review. And so that work, we are hopeful that it will again allow us to look at our inventory, look at our strategies, and so certainly don't want to promise that we wouldn't come
Yeah.
back in 28 with an
Sure.
additional request, but we, if it were to go up to that level, we would anticipate that would certainly get us back on track as we are also doing this other work,
Appreciate that.
and would bring forward a strategy at that time.
Yeah, and I'd love to, once you obviously got to present it to the board and everything, there's a big discussion about what is the appropriate use of technology in education now. If you look at, I've mentioned this before, if you go to some of the most expensive private schools now, they're not even using technology. They're just having kids write on paper. But obviously for ADA and
And
accessibility
And there are some state requirements around
And
how
state
certain,
requirements.
how certain
That's-
assessments are delivered.
That's exactly
So
right.
we, some things are going to have to stay. I don't
Of
want to promise
course.
it.
No, of course. But I just think the conversation, I'm glad to hear you say, like, you're reassessing the strategy, because I think we all have to think about what does that mean in this current environment. But any questions from colleagues on this? Yeah, Councilmember Evans.
I don't know that I have a question, but the reassessing the strategy is more so because you have to, not.
It's a combination.
Right.
It's a combination, certainly. Again, and Ms. Fields has just done a lot of really good strategic work and continues to do that. So we want to take a strategic look at it.
Sure.
Under the circumstances, yes, this would be under duress. And so it is a combination. And we do know that, resources are limited. I want to emphasize too, we're expressing how we would address this reduction. Certainly if the council saw fit to add funds here, we would be grateful.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you for restating that. I do know that technology, while Chair Jawando talked about wanting to get away from it, as you had mentioned, I was sitting here thinking that most of all the assessments are done. And then when I think about some of our SEIU employees, and I'm not going to call the name, but I have somebody that I think of when they talk about all the repairs and things they need to do at the high schools, and how a lot of it is hard to get to during the year. They do as much as they can, but in the summertime is when they use that opportunity to make certain that they're prepared for the upcoming year. So I know in my thinking, I know that it's unspent, but I'd like to, but what I was going to say is I want you to be able to do what you need to do. I hope we can leave that alone and allow you to.
No, I
Use that
appreciate
way.
that. And again, it will have implications for our
No,
program.
I
I
know.
mean, it's a very significant reduction. So
Right.
again, we want to emphasize how we will adjust. And again, the
Sure.
fortunate part about the timing of our expenditures is we have funds to adjust with,
Yeah.
but it will have implications.
So one question, I know that the human management system is fairly new. Is that included in this number in terms of, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
No, that comes out of operating. That
Okay.
is not in CIP at all.
Okay, okay. The software. Okay, I was thinking about that. Okay, thank you.
And then how does the, speaking of coming out of operating, how does the replacement fee when kids break that have to pay for the, for technology, how does that factor in, or does it factor into this? How does that factor into that money? Where does that go, and how do you utilize that? And how does that relate to this?
So certainly that's an important part of our work to partly recoup costs, but also just have some accountability structures with management of the devices. I wouldn't say, we certainly don't count on that as a revenue source. Like, I want to be clear, that's not, we have to charge this so that we can, afford $11 million. Like, that's so,
Well, yeah, I hope
because
not.
so right. So I just want to be very clear that, again, it is a revenue source, and as such, it comes in through our finance office. It's not earmarked, for this
So it just goes
Chromebook
into the
in
general
particular.
pot.
No, it comes back to the operating budget and technology
And
to
technology
support
on
the
the
kinds of
operating side.
repairs that we're talking about.
Okay.
But I guess when I say it's not earmarked, again, it's not an enterprise fund where we have to break even on those repairs.
Sure.
And because, again, while we do think that that's an important part of our accountability structure, it is not a money-making exercise, and I want to be very clear about that.
Do you have a sense of what comes in from that on any given year?
I don't believe we do. We'd have to get back to you on
Okay,
that.
I'd just be curious to know that. I mean, again, I know you'll use it for this. That was what you've just said, but and again, that you're not counting it in this number, but it adds to that flexibility. And unlike, you wouldn't want to count on that for sure.
And again, we do have some of those are supported in the operating budget as well as
Sure.
in the capital.
Yep, that makes sense. you have anything on this? Okay. Okay, Mr. Levchenko, anything you want to add on this?
Just to note the CIP big picture macro issue here. As Ms. McGuire mentioned, the executive recommended the $16.9 million cut. It's current revenue, so that means his operating budget assumes that that 16.9 is available for the operating budget.
Right.
So if the council goes along with that cut, then that's a wash. But if the council opts to include some or all of this in the CIP, then that would
Takes more money.
that would take away some revenue available in the operating budget.
Yep. Well, I think reluctantly we're not going to recommend that, given the pressure on the operating budget, which we'll talk about momentarily. But I think it was important to understand the context and understand that this is not something you can do inevitably or to an undetermined amount of time. You gonna have to have recoup some of this. And the good thing is that the CIP at least does recognize that in the sense that it goes back up next year. Okay, so I think we can, without objection, we can move forward and accept the CE's recommendation on this. And thank you for coming. You're welcome to stay, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Facility planning. Okay, the next item is facility planning. The board's requesting increases in the level of effort in 27 and 28 to provide for the area-wide elementary school boundary study, which was just adopted by the board and expected to begin this year. Recommendations from that will be forthcoming in 2028 or 2029, implemented a year following those recommendations. There's also a feasibility study for a potential P3 partnership for the redevelopment of the headquarters at Carver. This is included in the 27-28 request. In the CIP adjustments from March 13th, the county executive recommended some funding switches for this project. Also recommended removal of the P3 cost, which is $2.5 million, and as well as level of effort reductions in 29 through 32, which is a reduction of $350,000 each year. Council staff concur with the county executive's funding switches, but recommend supporting the board's proposed expenditures at this time, pending final reconciliation.
Anything you'd like to add on this?
Good morning, everyone. Andrea Swayatoka, Deputy Chief of Facilities. Good to see you all this morning. As noted by staff, just wanted to point out the reduction, while it would allow us, it would give funding to move forward with the elementary boundary and school closure and consolidation study, which has been presented to our board, and the scope was approved in March. So we are ready to move forward with that for school year 26-27. This reduction would limit our ability to move forward with hiring an advisor to evaluate the alternative financing model. We tried to be creative. In the original CIP request, we had bond funding showing for a headquarters replacement. That was reduced in one of our scenarios, right, that was sent to you in the CIP. We had included this money as an alternative to that, knowing that the bond funding in the CIP is limited. This allows us to work with an advisor to look creatively at the CES site and any other board-owned property of what else could we be doing to get the much-needed headquarters facilities and overall staff and central office improvements. So this reduction would limit our ability to do that.
And so the plan would be to just not consider that, or just do it in-house, or how would you move forward? Or not, you wouldn't move
We
forward.
would not be able to move
You just
forward.
would
Yeah, we would
pause
continue
on
to
that.
operate as we do today with staff, scattered across Goody and CSC and other various board-owned sites.
Got it. Okay. Any comments or questions on this? Councilmember Evans?
My only comment about Carver is that it's an old building, and it's it's sick. So at some point, I would love to see us do something with the building to bring it to the point where we're thinking about the staff, the employees that are in the building, right? Because it's old, and it was old when I was there. So I just want to put that out there that it's time to do something with the building, right? To bring it up to code and to speed. So I'll just leave that there.
Well, thank you for that. And
I
I
should
think,
set up to code, but I just mean just to
Yeah.
make it.
and just to build a little bit on what Ms. Wayatoka was saying, I mean, certainly this was our preferred strategy to really pursue that. And it will be limiting to not have that. We do know that we're going to have to find some creative solutions to this important infrastructure problem, but potentially others as well. Our infrastructure problems are many and not going away, and they are challenging to fund. We appreciate that. Part of our strategy is to continue to look for alternative approaches and creative approaches. At some point, there will need to be some funding dedicated to that. We won't stop thinking about it without this, but that does set us a little bit behind in terms of being able to pursue opportunities. So that's just, again, wanted to say we're not going to shut it down, but we also would be limited in our ability to move forward.
Understood. You okay? Okay. Councilmember May? Sure.
Yeah, I agree with the assessment raised by Councilmember Evans, who obviously speaks with some expertise in this area. And of course, I appreciate that you all are trying to want to make some major systemic changes here, because the folks who work in that building just don't have options. And it's really, really not tenable. And sometimes looking for just a patchwork of Band-Aid solutions is more expensive and less efficient than really investing up front and finding the real longer term solution. So I appreciate that is the effort here, and I wish that we had more money, and we recognize that we do. To your point, we do have to invest in this and get to this to more than Band-Aid solutions as quickly as possible.
Appreciate that. And then there's always, non-CIP year amendments should something arise, and, so we can always come back next year potentially. So I think without objection, we'll accept the CE's recommended changes here. A reduction.
So the next item is materials management building relocation. This project, which is $13.1 million in total cost, all current revenue, will provide for the interior construction of a new lease space for materials management. This is for the warehouse, and as part of the March 13th adjustments, the county executive recommended zeroing out the new expenditures in 27 and 28, which is a total of $10.6 million. MCPS would still have $2.5 million previously approved for this project. Council staff recommend preliminary support for the project as proposed by the board pending final reconciliation.
Yeah, and just to be clear on the last item, we are concurring with the county executive's funding switches, but also the board's allocation of how they want to use it as the council staff recommendation. Just want to make sure we're clear on that. Is everyone clear on what we're doing there?
For facility planning.
For facility planning.
Facility planning. I just want to make sure. Okay. I see. Yeah. Okay, great. So yes, the materials management building, Mr. McGuire. So we know this is a need for sure. And I've been in this building, and many of us have. And so you want to talk about just where things are and.
Sure. So this is, again, unfortunately, another extremely challenging infrastructure issue that is facing us as a school system, and I would say also sort of the community. There's been a lot of interest in the impact on that property and that property on the neighborhood. So this is one where we had sought out a leased property as an effort to move these functions as well as others for the materials warehouse to a leased property. We had the operating expense of the lease is in our operating budget. This money that was requested is to conduct the build out of the space so that we could use it and move into it. So I will say a couple of things. One, clearly without the build-out money, that's a very significant gap. I unfortunately have to report that the gap is technically larger than the 10 million here, because since we put that estimate forward in the fall, A number of things have happened. As everyone is well aware, inflation and other economic conditions are driving up the cost of just about everything, and this is included in that. So we have some inflationary pressures there. And as we dug in more to the scope of the build out, there were some specific aspects that perhaps that added some scope costs to our estimate as well. So while the 10 million reduction certainly is impactful, and that's a problem, I regretfully have to report that were the council to restore this, it would need to be more than the 10 million. So not great news on any kind of infrastructure front. Want to just be clear that this is a gap for us. We will have to reassess how we would approach this.
So just to be clear, the CE sent over a reduction of 10 million, which was initially in there. You're saying even if that were restored and as the CIP is brought together, that would not be enough to actually do what you needed to do. You need a lot more.
That's correct. We would need a higher number. We would need, again, and we certainly could look, as we had put forward in the 27, 28, doing that over 2 years, but there would be a significant increase in 27. All told, instead of looking at the 13 million, we're probably looking closer to 18 to 20.
Right. So an additional 5 to 7 million split over the 2 years in order to
above the 10.
Above the 10. Yeah.
Right, because the 10's not there either.
Right. So
Yeah,
you're
just
talking
wanna be
about,
clear.
so you're talking about, so it would be a restoration of 17 to 18 ish.
That's correct.
So, Mr. Levchenko, next year there's 84. I mean, I know this is a big puzzle, so if depending on what we would recommend, we have to decide whether we want to accept the CE's reduction of zeroing out or try to signal that we want you to try to figure this out in the bigger pie, correct?
Right. It's always a little confusing with current revenue because we have the operating budget connection.
Yeah.
If this was a straight bond-funded project, we would be looking at scenarios across the entire CIP to deal with the bond gap. Since this is current revenue, we have the current revenue issues within the CIP, but then we also have to take into account what's being assumed on the operating side. Right. And with current revenue, it's not just the FY27 number that we have to balance, it's the appropriation that's needed, which in this case is a multi-year appropriation, $10+ million. So that's the amount that, from a financial perspective, that's the money out the door effectively for FY27 that would hit the operating budget. Reconciliation.
10 million.
Yeah.
So that would need to go on the
plus the additional 5 to 7 that you were mentioning as well.
right. Yes, Councilmember Evans.
So if for some reason we accepted the CE's recommendation to, how would it work for MCPS with where the current location is? Will there be an issue with them, with you all staying at the current site?
So we own the Stone Street property and we own the Stone Street warehouse. So as a facility, that is a building that is ours. We will need to have conversations regarding other commitments.
Okay. I felt like in the past there were, it appears to be an eyesore for some, and so there has been talks with the school system about leaving because of the appearance. So we won't have anyone knocking on the door saying, "Why are you still here? What's going on?" Would it? I mean,
I would imagine you might.
Okay, all right. But
This is a challenging infrastructure problem,
Sure.
and it's one that we will have to solve. It's one we'll have to solve.
okay, yep. All right.
Okay, well, reluctantly, I mean, I don't see a way to make this work, especially connecting it to the operating budget as you discussed. So I think without objection, we'll accept the CE's reduction here. And hopefully we can figure this out in the future because we will, like you said, need to be figured out, but okay.
The next item for the committee to consider is relocatable classrooms. Because MCPS is in declining enrollment, they are requesting a gradually declining expenditure level for this project. MCPS has indicated it's not going to send a supplemental appropriation, which it has in the past, because they don't need to have as many relocatable classrooms available system-wide this year. So the accounting executive did not recommend any changes to this project in his recommended CIP. Council staff recommend approval of the project as proposed by the board.
We can say yes to something. Yeah.
Can I ask a
Ms.
question?
Evans, yes,
Yeah.
please.
So as a result of the boundary study, do we believe that there will be less of a need for relocatables?
Absolutely. We will not start removing those until next summer, though, because the implementation for the boundary, the two high school ones that were just done, does not start until 27, 28. And then there'll be potentially more removed after the elementary boundary study is completed and implemented. We are removing quite a few this summer, but mostly at holding schools where those are quite old. We're not using those at the moment. So when the time comes for those elementary projects to happen again, we would place new ones there as needed.
Okay. I was just trying to see if there is the numbers that we have, if they're accurate, will they at some point become lower? Just asking the question.
You'll see we actually dropped it every fiscal year for the next
Okay.
6 years with the intention of, yes, we envision. Now, some of that money, candidly, is needed to remove them. We're removing about 90 this summer across the various sites, less because of the boundary implementation, but because of the various holding schools. But as we start to implement the boundaries, we still have to have funds to remove them, unfortunately.
Okay.
That's why we can't zero it out quite yet.
Okay. All right.
But that is why we anticipate that number continuously going down for the next 6 years.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yes, Councilmember Mink.
Noting also that, and perhaps part of this is related to how much money we're able to move through during this budget process, but given the infrastructure issues, the system-wide infrastructure issues with HVAC, with air quality, that in some cases, perpetuates a need to look at relocatable classroom options. And I'll just note that as an expense that the school system incurs if we don't provide the funds to make the improvements to the buildings and the classrooms that are asked for. So I just note that as something that I assume is going to continue to come up and be part of the conversation. And I think all of us would rather be making the at scale repairs that are needed to the buildings themselves and only be using relocatable classrooms for kind of population adjustment reasons. But because of the many, many years long backlog of repairs that MCPS is working to deal with right now, this is a question that continues to come up and a need that continues to be looked at. So I'll just note that now, and I think it's an important conversation for us to include as we look at the budget implications at different funding levels now as well as moving forward. Because we can't have people who are staff and students, of course, who are in these rooms where they cannot breathe the air comfortably, and so there is an expense that comes with not being able to fix that. Thanks.
Very good point. Something to keep in mind. So I think, without objection, we'll agree with the board's request here. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Levchenko. And thank you, Ms. Swiatoka. All right. Mr. Prouty.
Yep. So the next part of your packet, starting on page 6, details some updates in terms of proposed spending and enhancements that we haven't discussed in committee yet. There's a number of them here. I can either run through all of them if you'd like, or we can just review them as a block.
You can mention them since
Sure.
we're here. We've got time. Yeah.
Good. So the first one is $6.4 million. It's for the Division of Special Education, and this is funding to help students who are served in non-public schools as a result of their needs in terms of their IEPs or 504 plans. The increase is needed due to a 7.5% increase in tuition as a result of the Teacher Parity Act, as well as projected enrollment increase of 49 students. This is mostly in the school-aged day program.
All right, any comments or questions on that? Okay, please continue.
The next one is $3.7 million for the Division of Technology Services. This will be used for a number of different items, including cybersecurity, HCM support, project management support, and contractual rate increases for core technology systems and services. There's an attachment in your packet that has more detail about this particular enhancement.
And obviously, if MCPS wants to say anything about, just let me know. But otherwise, we'll just, if colleagues have anything to say on this, I do like when a new person comes up. You want to introduce yourself? Where are you from?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Carly Thompson. I'm the Executive Director for the Division of Financial Management.
Got it. Wonderful. Good to see you. All right. So the next one, Mr. Prouty?
Yep, the next one is $4 million. This is for transportation. This will be used for hiring special education bus attendants to provide substitute bus drivers, and also to increase bus repair funding and allocate for planning for the regional programs transportation, which will be implemented in the fall of 2027. Again, the packet has more details about this particular enhancement on pages 226 and 227.
Thank you.
Next one is $1.6 million. This will be providing for additional training day for the employees who are part of SEIU Local 500. This would reduce no work, no pay days that those employees experience by one, and provide additional training to them for instruction, safety, and operations.
All right.
Yep. Next one is $1.5 million, and this is an additional professional training day for instructional staff. This will increase district professional training in Tier 1 instruction, special education services, and English language development.
Ms. McGuire?
Thank you. And not to interrupt Mr. Prouty, but the third item also relates to professional development. And I just want to comment on all three of these together, acknowledging on the one hand it's a significant amount of funding that we are requesting to put forward for this effort, but it does reflect the level of serious intent and value and priority that we're placing on this training to have all of our colleagues across every bargaining unit, across every division, department, every segment of the district, having the training that they need, having that alignment in training, having the consistency in the understanding of what employees' roles are in contributing towards the organization's through line of teaching and learning and instruction. For our SEIU employees in particular, it gives us an opportunity to provide training that often can be very challenging to work out in their work schedules. And again, we want to place a value on all that training across all of our bargaining units. So while on the one hand it is a fairly substantial investment, I just wanted to elevate sort of why it's there. It's listed in three parts because it affects different parts of the organization. But taken together, this we feel is a very foundational effort to really move the needle on all of our strategic plan goals, the board's strategic plan goals, from teaching and learning, of course, which is central, but across safety, across operations. We really feel strongly that this is, again, a very important collective effort for all the members of our organization.
Appreciate that context, and yeah, that's important. It's important that we invest in the training and professional development for our staff so that they can be there for our students and families. The next one, Doug?
The next one is $2 million for professional development. That is in keeping with what
just
Ms. McGuire just discussed.
There you go. So these are all things that we didn't discuss, but that are a part of the enhancements in the budget that have been there all along, and it's important that we mention them. Any questions or comments from colleagues? Okay, so let's continue on.
So the next part of your packet details budget changes by priority area first, in tables 5 at the bottom of page 6. This reviews the 4 areas that the board put forward in terms of different parts of the budget for enhancements, base budget reductions, non-discretionary requirements, blueprint requirements, and discretionary expenditures. And then following that on pages 7 and 8 are some highlights from the summary proposed budget page. Again, this is a bridge. The entire summary page is connected, or sorry, is linked, I should say, on page 7 of your report. So this just details some of the more major expenditures. We've discussed most of these in committee previously.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight on Table 5 that there were additional $10 million plus in base budget reductions that MCPS did. This is the second year in a row that you all have done that, and this is 41 FTEs. And I think we often hear, we've got to right size and tighten our belts and push people into the classroom. And I think it just further underscores that the budget as presented is not a lot of bells and whistles, and it already, has reductions in it. And just want to point that out for people. I think that's not well known and talked about enough. All right, Mr. Pratty, and as you said, we've talked about a lot of these proposed items over the last few meetings,
Indeed.
but thank you for mentioning that.
Yep, you're welcome. So finally, you have funding options for the committee to consider. These are listed for you on page 9. There are basically 3 options put forward. One is to fund at the county executive recommended level. Option 2, in keeping with the council president's memorandum, it would be to consider increments of 10% reduced funding. This would be for funding above the FY26 local funding level. And then the third option would be to a committee can consider a funding scenario which is not included amongst those.
So thank you. There's that third option. Obviously, I'll start the conversation. I sent a memo to colleagues yesterday, and folks in the public are aware of this, that, my preference would be that we could meet the moment and fully fund the budget. Just start with that. I think the scenario that we're in, both nationally, locally, with what's required as far as the property tax increase, I don't think it's appropriate to raise property taxes right now. And because that's linked, I think we do have to, or are going to have to reduce the overall budget. But one thing I've been clear about is that what I don't want to happen, and I won't support, and I don't think should happen, is that it's balanced solely on the backs of MCPS, of our teachers and our educators and our staff and our students and families. And unfortunately, when you're the biggest item, that tends to happen when you're looking for money. And so to try to stop that from happening, I made a recommendation that is a painful recommendation, but that I hope will show the seriousness of our collective effort that we're going to have to do to try to make this budget work, and without disproportionately burdening our families at a tough time. So I had proposed that we reduce the request by $30 million, but putting it in tranches of $10 million each. And so I wanted to talk to staff. I know we can say whatever we want to say, but I want to hear from colleagues. But the idea would be that we would be supporting and almost drawing a line that, and that's how I look at it, that this is the absolute lowest that can be accepted. And obviously the board, who I know met yesterday, or 2 days ago, yesterday, and is starting initial conversations is about how they would react to, various funding options. Council President has obviously put out an option that is, I think, untenable. A $90 million cut would not only put the contracts at risk, it would also lead to rifts and people losing their jobs. And at a time when, we're demanding, appropriately so, that student achievement increase and that we differentiate instruction, that we give our special educators the tools they need, and that we have security in schools. I mean, I'm mindful that a lot of the things in this budget, as we did last year, some of the discretionary items are to add security in schools, in our elementary schools, for example. We saw a harrowing example this week of a security guard literally risking his life to disarm a person who had a gun at Blake High School. And, I've recently found out this guy was just on the job like a couple weeks. It's like a new security guard. And I remind people all the time that starting salary is $38,000 a year. And so you have someone who's stepping up, protecting our children, and that's seen as discretionary in this budget. And it's someone making $38,000 a year. And we're saying we want to reduce that. It doesn't make any sense for so many reasons, but so I made the recommendation reluctantly because I want to try to protect as much of the budget and give the board as much flexibility as possible to prioritize within the funding level. So I've said a lot. I would love to hear from my colleagues. Obviously, the committee will make a recommendation today, and then that will have to be sorted out with the other 8 colleagues over the next, and MCPS is, I think, on the agenda for Tuesday afternoon for the full council to take straw votes. So we will discuss whatever the recommendation is here today, and ultimately the council will take a straw vote. But I also often, remind people, while I've put forward a very transparent line-by-line suggestion of how we approach the budget, there is always that after the straw votes are taken, there's the back room where decisions happen, which I don't like about our process. And so there's going to need to be, I'm going to be doing everything I can to be transparent and communicating what's happening. But that's the kind of the next steps here. So I'll turn to colleagues if they have thoughts. Councilmember Mink.
Agree with all of that. I'd like to give you all an opportunity to speak to, especially given that the board just met, to speak to the best of your ability, what cuts at different levels could look like.
Certainly, and I do want to be clear, the board had a meeting yesterday.
Right. There's not decisions,
right?
But whatever you can give us to kind of paint a picture.
And they had an open session, and the budget was not a topic there, so I just want to be very clear about that. We will, of course, the board does have to begin that process of digesting how any potential funding reductions from the council would be allocated, and that process will need to continue. So I appreciate the opportunity, and certainly we appreciate the very difficult situation that all of us collectively are in when it comes to the financial circumstances and realities that we face. I think in terms of what things mean, absolutely, 90 million would be, that is an untenable number, frankly. That's a lot of money. And certainly at that point, I shouldn't say nothing's untenable. We will work with what we have to work with, but that would necessitate us to look both at contracts as well as positions, just across the board. I do think that relative to the $30 million, I do want to be clear also, though, that, again, there still would be position impacts. And we are very close to our funding, our filling of vacancies. We're very close on the personnel front. We are working very hard to place involuntary transfer individuals, but we are not rife with vacancies, and we aren't adding positions. So again, there are some realities there that we just, again, want to be very clear about that as well. That said, obviously we will take a look at what we need to look at. I would ask just globally that as the council moves forward, if this is the committee's recommendation, that in addition to this recommendation, the council consider the other recommendations we were just speaking of. That's a big reduction in tech mod that, again, we're working to bridge, and that does have an impact on our operating budget. Some of the current revenue that we had asked for in the capital budget got pulled out, so perhaps that could benefit us. So again, just wanting to look at that in the totality. To your point, Mr. Joando, about not having the acknowledging that MCPS is the largest agency around. We do still have needs and commitments, and that all of those reductions together have an impact. Just keeping those reductions in mind as well when we look at the impact on the operating budget.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know that as the board continues discussions, then that'll further our ability to speak, to understand the framing with more specificity. But I think that what you've just laid out, although you are being very diplomatic, I mean, it paints a very dire and also realistic picture. And as my colleagues have noted, there is not couch cushion money here. We have this council, this committee, and MCPS and the Board of Ed have really been working in a very pointed way, especially over the last few years, to make it clear to the public what is in the budget, what these dollars are funding. MCPS and the BOE have been very responsive to requests to dig into the base and look for cuts. There have been cuts, significant cuts made to positions that has been responsive to that. And I will just say that there are not other departments, frankly, other agencies across the county who are going into their base budget and making these kinds of significant cuts from the base, being asked to do that and actually doing that, and every year being willing to come here and spend the year talking about what's in the base budget and what is in the request with this level of detail and this level of specificity. Nobody else is doing that. And yet here we are, and you're in front of us again, and we're talking about possibly reductions that would indicate mass rifts. And to your point about, the vacancies, yes, to some extent there is to just lay out what I think that means. If you eliminate some positions, you are able to offer some of those folks other positions to fill other vacancies. Those might be massive pay cuts. They might be a completely different type of work than they have been doing for the last however many years. And those folks may well understandably choose to look somewhere else. But at least in this market, right, it's an opportunity to have another paycheck. But even of those not great offers, potentially, there's a very limited number of them because you have already been so responsive to the request to make those cuts. So you can really only go so far and even have those offers on the table for the people whose positions you would have to cut. So we are talking about the council making a decision to tell MCPS to leave a bunch of people who are in already a relatively a tight framework in terms of who's doing how many jobs, because those cuts have already been taking place, to tell those folks you're not going to have jobs anymore in this economy, and jobs that are by and large directly serving our students and our families. And I will just say that there are central staff positions that are important as well. We have a very tight central staff, and at some point we start hearing from complaints from families or from administrators who may be understanding, but they're just like, I keep calling and I'm not getting it. Well, yeah, because we're preserving all of the positions in the schools. Somebody has to be running things at some point as well in order for the people in the schools to be able to do what they're doing. So MCPS is at a place where we're very, very, very tight. And I'm upset about the scale of cuts that are being proposed, because it is so unfair and really inappropriate for who MCPS is serving, which is our children. Our children. This is the future of our county. And again, no other departments are asked to go into the base to the extent anywhere close to what we have insisted MCPS must do. I've been part of that insisting, to be very fair, and it's because I want to be able to come up here and defend the budget and to say that there's nothing in the couch cushions. Because we may have these conversations, but if it's not laid out in a very, very clear way, it's hard to make the case to colleagues and to the public for the amount of money that it simply takes to run a very, very large, or largest, agency here. So you have done that. Many cuts have been made, and it's like we're still coming back for more. We want blood from a stone, the stone that is serving our children. They are feeling the impact in the classroom now, and there are complaints on this body about it, and yet we're going to come for more. The more is not there. So I'm not going to be supporting a budget that has that kind of impact. I cannot defend that. I can't defend that. There are other options. Chair Jawando has laid out other options, which is also cuts that we don't want to make, and is also going to result in some very unpleasant decisions. But we have to be realistic and transparent and honest about what these levels of cut, what we're really asking, and how that's going to impact on the ground, because there's just not fudging that is happening here. The level of transparency is too great. I see you reaching for your button.
I appreciate that, Ms. Mink, and I wanted to just clarify a couple of pieces. So to your point, too, about some of the, so in addition to the reductions, as you well point out, that we have taken in both years, those are real positions with real, employees in them. Also, we have also taken in this budget proposal reductions that relate to our enrollment decrease. So we have accounted for that as well, and we took those reductions not only across all the sectors of the organization. So that is already included in there as well. The other piece that is really critical and is creating fiscal pressures, but that we have to do, are some of the fiscal housekeeping, if you will, measures that we must take to safeguard the future of the organization, significantly our employee benefits plan, as well as some of our other, again, financial underpinnings. Our lapse number is frankly too high given how few vacancies we have. So some of those pieces that threaten the stability of the organization, we won't be able to compromise on because we won't threaten the stability of the organization. So again, that just adds to the pressures that you're describing. And so, certainly those are very real.
Thank you. Important points, and I will just quickly add two other things. That one, as has been said, items listed as discretionary, we cannot just lop those off the top. There are items in there that we desperately need. They should not be discretionary, but they are. The security guard, to not have one security guard in a bunch of our schools is indefensible. In elementary schools especially, where you already have the ratio of adults to children, is already very, very difficult. And we're going to not allow them to have, we're going to say it's not important to fund to have one security guard at those schools. And we see the kind of direct impact that they have on safety and security. That does not make sense. That is indefensible. The special education resource teachers, same thing. To not have those is putting our staff in a very, very difficult position. There are a limited number of people who can attend certain meetings with students. With our special education students. And when we don't have those resource teachers, it is a very, very difficult burden that we are placing on staff to say, you have to attend all of these meetings, and you got to be in the classroom doing, serving students in all these different ways and doing so in many ways, it does not make sense to have those, and they should be requisite, because you need somebody who's doing that job, and who's doing that job now, a piecemeal bunch of other people who have their own other jobs to do already. So again, it's called discretionary because maybe it's not written into the law, but maybe they should be written into the law if people don't want to fund them, because they're necessary. And then I will just say also that if we are coming even close to making MCPS consider opening the contract with their labor unions after we said, hey, we'd like you all to come to the table and do 2-year planning, make all of these concessions, benefit all of these things. And that was done in good faith. The only reason that can happen is if we're able to make sure those contracts are honored for the 2-year period. We're going to come back and say, and put you in such a position that not only are you going to have to cut positions, you're also going to have to open the contracts, because there's nothing left to give. I wish I could go back in time and say, you know what, actually you shouldn't do that 2-year agreement.
Well said. Councilmember Evans.
Yes. So do I go behind Mr. Mink? No, I appreciate the comments of my colleagues, and believe in public education, had the opportunity to serve on the school board for 8 years, and now that I have the opportunity to serve on the council, it's a little bit different. It's different on this side. So I still care about education, but now I have the opportunity to kind of look at Montgomery County through another lens. And I've been fortunate with the help and support of the staff that I have in the office to be able to go across the county to hear about the lived experiences of Montgomery County residents. And everybody is not experiencing Montgomery County in the same way. And so I'll just say that while I am enjoying this job, because I am, the budget cycle is a tough piece, but I'm glad that I'm here to take part in the decision. And I know that when we all come out on the other side at the end, that there will be somebody in this county that will experience this budget in a different way, in a way that I hope is not as hard. But I want to say that, I've heard my colleagues talk about, how difficult this budget is, and that every year you say that this budget cycle or season is difficult, but then I've heard some say this one actually really is. And it does feel like it is. We have a different leader at the federal level, and we're just experiencing things just a little bit different. So what I would like to do is, I'm not supportive of option one. With option two, what I do feel like, we're in a moment in time where this needs to be discussion with all of our colleagues. I don't want to cut MCPS, but if there's going to be a discussion on what we're going to do to reduce the budget, I would like to do that with all of my colleagues. I feel like this is a little premature. And so I just want to take a moment. I heard Mr. Prouty talk about another option. That option isn't listed, but I think for me, the option would be to further discuss with my colleagues what this could look like for MCPS. What I try to do as a former school board member is just kind of share what the school system is going through, what it's like when they bring forward their budget, that whenever they bring forward the budget, they're not asking for anything that they don't actually need. They need everything in the budget. So I think that this calls for a time where I know typically the Education and Culture Committee will make a decision, bring it forward to their colleagues so that they can in turn take in consideration what the Education and Culture Committee is saying. But I think this is a different time now. I appreciate the fact that our council president put out a proposal. Was I in agreement with that proposal? I was not. I feel like it hurt working families. I feel like there were a lot of things that that was in the proposal that just would have an even heavier hit for our families. So I'm at a point where I just want to have the discussion with the full council. I hope that we can continue to be as transparent as we can. This is my first process, so I don't know what it looks like. I know that today will end committee discussions. Everything will be put on the table for us to discuss as a full council next week. I thought I heard the council president say that this would be as transparent of a process that it could be. I thought I heard her say that we would be bringing things forward to each work session and having a discussion. So I'm going to take people at their word. But what I also will do is every step of the way, share with people what my thoughts are, why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. I sat across on the other side and said that I wasn't in favor of a tax increase. That's because I was listening to or how people were experiencing what was happening with the loss of their jobs at the federal level. And then I heard a couple of public hearings where there was a gentleman who is retired talk about he doesn't have a pension. He's relying on his savings. And so when we continue to increase the taxes, that's a big hit to him. And so I'm of the mind of wanting to do what's not only going to help the county today, but think about how our decisions will impact the county in the future. I don't want to be hasty in whatever decision I make, but I do think it's going to require being thoughtful and having had Chair Jawando's proposal for a little bit of time, not being able to really dissect it, but just looking at it surface level while we're asking MCPS to make cuts, the deep cuts. It seems like we're asking the departments and the agencies to take even deeper cuts. I've tried to be very active in listening to all the different agencies that have come before the Government Operations and Policy Committee, and people are taking deep cuts. So to go even deeper is gonna look very interesting for our county department. So I just want to be thoughtful. I appreciate the work and time you took to put together your proposal, even President Fanny Gonzalez, but I want to have a further discussion. That's just me. And it's not saying who I'm supporting and who I'm not supporting. It's just saying that I need more time to continue to look at this, and I will be doing that with my council colleagues at the sessions that are be coming up over the next couple of weeks. So that's where I'm at.
Councilmember May.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think possibly that I might be still hearing alignment up here, because I think that all of us would like the full amount on the reconciliation list. We all would prefer to have the finances that are available to do full funding for MCPS, and I think we all recognize that that's very unlikely to be the case. And I think we all recognize that a significant level of cuts to MCPS is not tenable, and I would say not acceptable. And so what I would like that maybe strikes a balance here, and what I think might be also what the chair was indicating, is if we put all of it onto the reconciliation list. So we'll have a more fulsome conversation in the context of the rest of the reconciliation list with our council colleagues. But if we can break out $30 million of that into tranches to have some separation there, the $10 million tranches, to indicate that, if that's where this body thinks it is appropriate to start the conversations around that. We think that the remainder, which is like about 150, that we should be funding that to make sure that there is some level of tenability, that beyond which it's a different conversation. And then within that remaining 30 million, that's where we kind of focus the conversations. That way we send some clarity around there being a limit here. And I think that the work that we have done over the last year to dig into, even over the last month here, to dig into the details of what the MCPS budget looks like, that makes me comfortable with being able to say we got to set some kind of limit here and let that inform our colleagues that there should be some kind of limit, while also leaving room for the difficult conversations that we recognize have to happen there.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that's my attempt. I mean, as you know, having been on the committee these last few years, and Councilmember Evans having joined the committee recently, but knowing the education budget well, the role of this committee traditionally has been to make a recommendation that's informed by our many, many meetings and understanding of the budget. That's the role of every committee, to give a recommendation because they have a deeper level of expertise. And it's always advisory and is not binding to the full council, which obviously has to make the decision. I think in the case of MCPS, but in line with the way the council president has outlined the budget process, any increase is going to go on to the reconciliation list, as well as any potential accepted decrease. And so they would be distinguished in that way. I do think I agree with Councilmember Mink that it's important to, I think, represent the conversations that have happened here and what is at stake, and set some advisory demarcation lines of, where things, should go, and what would happen if you went below certain numbers. That's one of the things I was going to say. I want to ask a couple questions, but I would ask that you go back and communicate, and I will too, but communicate directly to the board and the superintendent that I think we need to have for Tuesday's conversation, there needs to be some level of understanding of, scenarios as close as you can get to the types of things. Again, the board has to decide, but what I'm asking is, I think we need to formally ask for some guidance in what that would mean. I think the board's going to get the amount of money it's going to get, and it's going to make its own decisions. But I think the good thing about the way the budget is structured is that there is at least some high-level guidance that here are the things that we think are non-discretionary, discretionary, and I think there's an assumption that I think the discretionary pot is around 23 million-ish.
25
So 25 million, excuse me. so that if there was a reduction above that, that you would be going into the discretionary list. And then, but even with the discretionary, or non-discretionary, excuse me, there's been some discussion is, well, are all those things, is that where you would go, or would you go other places? And I think having some sense of what it could mean would be helpful. You have your mic on, so I'm going to let you respond.
So certainly we can take back that request. I will say the board is due its own process as well. So we'll have to navigate that. I think I can perhaps share some more clarity than I have. I do want to be clear that at any level of magnitude, certainly 30 and beyond, we are looking at positions. And again, as we've said, we are not flush with vacancies, which does have a direct impact on individuals and whether we would have an ability to offer them an alternative. So that is, I just
What
want
is
to
the
again be clear
vacancy
about
rate?
that.
How many vacancies do we have today?
So I apologize, I don't know. I just know that, again, on the teacher level, we're very close. It's that case across the board.
Okay.
I think that.
That
so
might
we-
be good something
we
to
can bring
bring
that back.
on Tuesday.
I think that, but again, as everyone knows, and as Dr. Taylor likes to say, when your budget is 90% people, there are two aspects
Sure.
to that. How many do we have and how much do we pay them? And certainly we would be extremely reluctant to look at the second. And that leaves us with the first. So we are going to be in that place. There is a number. I don't know what that number is, but there is a point at which we would have to look at both, right? So these are the gradations. In terms of the framework, I think we can say that certainly we would look at our core mission. Our core mission is teaching and learning, and build out from that core, right? So there's sort of concentric circles of the relationship that operations divisions positions have to that core of a teacher in a classroom, and building out from there is again sort of a framework that we would look at. I realize that's not the specificity you're looking at, but I think looking for rather, but in terms of how we would approach that, that is, I think, a reasonable priority framework to put forward. There are positions in every aspect of that. There is no circle without positions, if you look at it again as a concentric circle. And so, again, just to be clear, that is where we would be a very large thing that we'd have to be looking at.
Yeah, no, I get it. And just to be, you're so diplomatic, Essie, which I love, but you were saying like you wouldn't want to look at opening the contracts, which means you would have to reduce what people who currently work for you get paid. That's what opening the contracts means, or the benefits, but you would, and then there's a scenario in which you'd have to do that depending on how much. But there's also no matter what, even at the level that I've proposed, there would be people that would not be able to maintain in their positions.
That's correct.
Yeah. And I think to Councilmember Evans' point, like what's always tough for folks is because, we spend a lot of time with your budget. We spend a lot of time understanding what's going on in the schools. We've had 4 sessions here. Even for that full council discussion on Tuesday, I think it's really important that people understand what's at stake and what are potential consequences of funding levels, right? And again, not locking you into anything because you have to make those decisions, and that's an elected body that has to figure that out, along with superintendent and others' recommendations. But I do think it's important for people to have that context. For example, the staffing standards, right, are in the budget here, they're a $34 million line item with 420 FTEs, right? That is connected to reducing class size and correcting the staffing situation, particularly in our elementary schools, but in other schools that have inequitable allocation over years, that has grown over years. We had a session on this. Kids just did their MCAP. My middle schoolers just did their testing, so we're eagerly awaiting, results, right? And when you talk about wanting to improve student achievement, my colleagues often talk about, and we often talk about, how do we make sure our kids have the best opportunity to learn the material, to be supported and safe. Staffing standards is directly connected to that. So is that discretionary? Is it non-discretionary? How will that be used? I mean, because when you're talking about that amount of money and that amount of people, that's certainly something that I would imagine would need to be part of the discussion. Is there anything you could add to that line item in particular?
Certainly, and I think, so when we're talking about reductions in the tens of millions, I think it's fair to say there's not going to be a part of the organization that isn't affected. And so when you ask me, like, what's at stake, that's one thing that's at stake. So it's not that there's very little we can protect when we're talking about that magnitude. Again, in part because there are some other building blocks that have to stay. Benefits being one of them. There are commitments that we have to maintain. In terms of the staffing standards, so what you see in that spreadsheet is both the reduction that would be associated with enrollment if we made no changes of any kind, and a restoration, and that's the positions that you're highlighting.
So the 505 reduction.
Right.
And
So
then
we're still at a net reduction for enrollment.
Right.
So our enrollment is decreasing, and there is still a net reduction. In the space of that reduction, we are proposing to add back a significant number, but still less than the total of the reduction, of positions to do what you're saying, to address the staffing standards, to address the uneven and inequitable staffing that has occurred over years, and to try to change how we approach staffing in our elementary schools. There would be a lot more that we would want to do there, but again, have to phase that in, have to take it in certain steps in order to try to stay within some range of fiscal affordability. In terms of your question of is it discretionary or not, we have to staff the schools. And so it's not really, again, this is a process to transition to new staffing standards. So it's not really like, oh, if we don't do this, then we have the 500. I mean, it is a more nuanced framework that we're putting forward for next year as we transition. So again, that's one that's not really one or the other. Those two things go together. We have to staff schools. So that's why it's non-discretionary. And the manner in which we staff them is, again, in a transitional place.
So just to be clear, if that money was assumed as a reduction, you just wouldn't change the standards, I would assume. The board would have to potentially keep what's in place.
So again, these are policy discussions that the board has to have. I mean, the board did adopt the staffing standards as part of their budget. So again, that's not something that I can say we would just not do that. And again, as a structure, it's not really a light switch do or don't. It's a process.
Yep. No, that makes sense. I just wanted to illuminate some of the really not desirable decisions. Mr. Prouty, what is it that you understand as the proposal? I just want to make sure you're clear.
Thank you. So what I hear you proposing is a reduction of $30 million in tranches.
Not billion.
30 million.
Did you say billion?
I did not.
Okay. I hope not.
We're not at that level yet.
The county doesn't have that. Yeah.
Inflation would be really bad if we got to that point.
Exactly.
A reduction of $30 million in tranches of $10 million, and then the remaining $149 million would be placed on the reconciliation list.
So I think, so we would put the entire amount on the reconciliation list, the 189, but I'm sorry.
It's 179.
179 is the
179.
local.
Yes.
Only the local has
Yes,
to go on.
sorry, 179. But give guidance that if there were reductions to be considered, you could consider them in 3 tranches of 10 million. And that would be, the line which I wouldn't want to go beneath. Yeah, Councilmember Mink, go ahead.
Or maybe to phrase it to mean the same thing, but to phrase it in the one as the 149 that we would recommend, like guaranteeing that essentially. So again, the full amount on the reconciliation list, but indicating that the largest block beyond the $30 million, that the council take that as guaranteed funding essentially, and the 30 million divided up into tranches, 3 tranches of 10 to allow for more nuanced discussions and deliberations, be the ones that we're really talking about whether we take or how much we take reductions from. But again, without having any of that being indicated as a preemptive reduction to the point made by Councilmember Evans.
Understood. Does that make sense? It does. Councilmember Evans, are you okay with that? Repeat it. So yes. So Mr. Prouty, you repeat it because you're going to have to write it.
I am. I will indeed. So to put the $179 million, which is the increase in local funding from this current year's funding, on the reconciliation list, indicate that the council the committee would like the council to consider $149 million of that as essential funding or guaranteed, and that the remaining $30 million be considered for increases, or decreases, I should say, of $10 million in each tranche.
So everything is on the table, yeah, for the full council, but that we're just trying to create a floor for discussion. Again, council, of course, can go below that floor, but that just indicating that we think that would not be advisable. You okay with that? Or you want to say? Yeah, Councilmember Evans.
Yeah, so I'm just going to stick with what I said, and you all can support it. And
I think we're saying the same thing.
Are you saying you don't want to you just want the committee not to recommend anything? Is that what you, I wasn't really clear on what you were saying.
so I thought I was saying that I didn't feel
You want no
comfortable.
recommendation from the committee?
I said that I wanted the full council to take it up, and that I didn't want us to recommend the 30 million. No, because I don't.
recommend or recommend the funding at all. I'm just trying to understand, like, you just don't want us to recommend any course of action. That's what I'm just trying to understand.
Are you all clear of what I said? I wasn't talking to you as Ms. McGuire. I was talking to Mr. Prouty. And
I believe you're
Ms.
indicating
Cummings.
that you would not support the proposal that has been put forward that I just repeated to you.
right.
But what?
So you don't know what your proposal is? You just
No. I'm just trying to understand
So-
how you want it to be represented. Do you want to abstain from this? Do you want to just say you don't think the committee should make a recommendation? I just want to understand so it can be represented. That's all I'm
Right. So
asking.
I thought what I said earlier, and I'll repeat it just to be clear, that I wanted the recommendation to come from the council.
Okay,
I
so-
wanted to make the decision with the full council as to what we were going to do.
Okay,
That's
so
what
I don't think I'm misstating it. I think you prefer the council make the decision, the full council,
Or the recommendation.
the recommendation,
The decision with no recommendation.
with no recommendation from the committee.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's clear to represent, so it would be.
That's not an abstention. Yep.
Yeah, so I think it would be go ahead.
I think the confusing part is that I think all of us want all of the money to go into the reconciliation list. I think we're all right. I think all of us want 179 million to go to the reconciliation list. Is that part? I think there is agreement on,
I don't know if I'm hearing
right?
that,
Because if they're okay,
but
Yes.
yeah,
And then we would make the decision as to
Right.
what was going to,
right.
as a full council.
Right.
I'm trying
Okay.
to understand.
Yeah.
Is everybody clear? Ms. McGuire, did you
Well,
want?
and I apologize. I have a
Sorry,
technical.
mid sentence. Okay.
Hold on one
I'm
second. Hold on one second.
Okay. Sorry.
Councilman Mick.
Sorry. I think I might understand what is confusing everybody here. I think that we all are agreed. I think all three of us want 179 million to be on the reconciliation list for full council discussion and decision from there. Right? Yes. Okay. Councilmember Evans says yes. And okay. So all of us want that. And I think the only difference is a nuanced one. I think the only difference is that Chair Jawando and I also, as part of that, want it to be indicated that there is a committee recommendation that the council not fund below 149 million. That we could fund above that, right? Because the rest of it is going to be it's all going to be on the reconciliation list. So that the council we're saying, feel free to, let's discuss whether we need to go, whether we can and need to go above that funding amount. But we would like a committee recommendation that also says we do not want to go below 149 million. And I think that's the kind of nuanced difference. But under either of these proposals, all 179 million would be on the reconciliation list.
I don't think you said anything different than option 2. I think that's essentially option 2, right? Am I not confused? The $30 million cut, you're just saying.
Well, option 2, mine was not in the packet.
Option 2
Is in the packet.
is to consider reductions of 10% tranches of the entire $179 million. So the committee could recommend a reduction of 17.1. But that would lead to the committee recommending a reduction of $17.9 million, or twice that, or 3 times that, depending on what the committee's preferences are. What I am hearing is that the committee is not interested in recommending a specific reduction, but rather putting all of the $179 million in the reconciliation list with an indication that the committee is preferring to have $149 million as minimum increase in local funding.
Yeah, that's what Councilman Mink is saying. And I just want to be clear, the option 2 in the packet is about 10% reductions that are about 17.9. That's not what I referenced. I just said 10 million. So I'm more of option 3, create your own, meal.
Yep.
But, so just so we're clear on that. But yes, that is what has been proposed. So are you okay with it being unanimous that the 179 million be on the reconciliation list to be discussed at full council with that part of it?
I'm okay with that part of it.
Okay.
Yes.
I think
But
the
I feel like
difference
we're
comes
trying to
with
get to 3.0 just to get to 3.0, but I thought I was real clear in what I was stating.
Did I get it right? That we're agreed on the 179 million, but it would be a 2-1 on the committee recommending a floor of 149
Yes.
million.
We can bifurcate that.
Yes. Okay.
You got that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we got there.
To clear, may I continue to clarify?
Please.
So under the 2-1, then would we have essentially 4 tranches then? A tranche of 149 million, which 2-1 we're recommending the council set as a floor, and then 3 tranches of $10 million. That would be more up for discussion for a total of 179 million.
Understood.
I agree with that. So
Okay.
the 3-0 decision is to put the entire 179 on the reconciliation list for discussion. The 2-1 recommendation from the committee to make the floor 149, and then with 3 $10 million tranches to consider.
Right. The third $10 million tranche would get to the $449 million. Right. If you do all 3 together, that would indicate a reduction to 149.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just make sure we understand.
And nothing on the reductions list. These are 4 items that are
Yes.
all going onto the reconciliation list for consideration of funding, with one of them being suggested as a 2-1 as guaranteed funding.
Understood.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. We'll see how clear that is on Tuesday. but I think we can all speak to it, obviously, and ultimately the full council will make a preliminary recommendation, a straw vote on Tuesday. I think Ms. McGuire and team, if you can relay this conversation to your colleagues and obviously the board members, which I know a lot of them watch, so I'm sure they're equally confused. And then if you could bring the vacancy information for Tuesday, and then any other information that you or the board think would be helpful to give context to the conversation that we've teed up to have on Tuesday. And the superintendent obviously will be here as well. So thank you so much for your work through the process, and thank you to our partners who are here and the staff and all the folks at MCPS. So with that, we have a committee recommendation and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Ones that get, now, we're not going to shame any of the other butterflies that don't get as much notice.
They're all beautiful.
They're all
and
beautiful.
important.
That's right.
But I see your eyes every time
Yeah.
a blue morpho goes past.
That's